Alright, I'm reading text from this file right here using the include str macro. Now that I've read it, it will show up in my console. I'll show you the text file right here. It doesn't have a lot of things. Now I want to store it in structs. I want to store each word right here. So for example, I want to store when in the course. I want each word and its length to be stored in a struct. So let's store it as a struct. Let's create the struct first. Let's take the string and give it a heap allocated string. This means that the string field, or let's say value, the value field will be a heap allocated string and the length will be a usize. Let's implement debug for it so that we can print it out. And this is going to be each word, but I also want a new struct which will hold a vector of this word. So that struct will hold a vector of these words right here. So let me get out of here for now. Let's go over here, specialize debug. So now what we want to do is we want to turn something from a string to a struct. So in Rust, to turn something from a string to a struct, the name for the trait that we have to implement for converting something from a string to a struct, from string to struct, is pretty simple. Let's implement it for word first. Now to implement this trait on word, the from str trait for word, we have to also implement a function on it. And this is where we define how to turn it from a string to an actual struct. Now, including this function, we also have to implement an error type right here. And for this, I like to use color error and its report type, which is just a re-export of the error type from Rust. This just gives us a prettier report, like a prettier error. Let's go over here. Let us get self. Self right here is word. So we can start typing with value right here, which will be when you turn a word into this struct, the value will be the word itself, right? So the value will be s.toString, because s right here is a string slice and we have to turn it into a heap allocated string. Next will be the length, which will be s.length. And this should be pretty much it. Let's see what error we are getting. Alright, we have to return an option. So let's return an option. A result type. It expects a result type to be returned from this function. So now this works. Now that we have this, let's see what happens when I turn a word into a struct. Let's say I want to turn Now let's print out the struct word. Let's open a console. And as you can see, this is now contained in a word struct whose value is Mohania and the length is 8. So now we can convert a string into a word. Now that's not enough. I want to also turn this entire text that we get here. If I print it out right here, this is the actual Declaration of Independence from America. A part of it at least. So it prints right here. So if I want to turn each one of these into such little words that I just showed you, I'll have to implement a from string for the word struct as well. So let's do that. And now we've implemented from string for words as well. Let's see what happens when we try to parse a string as the words struct. This one right here. Let's go back. Let's go to our console and run this. And now this works. As you can see, we've got all the words in here, right in here, right? There are some problems. For example, we still have the commas right here. We still have, because we're splitting by the white space, right? So there are some problems. We'll work on them later. Let's do that. But you might also notice another problem, that every time we pass a word right here, we are allocating new memory right here. We are allocating new memory for every string. I don't want that. My struct is just meant to be a watcher. It's just meant to be someone who looks over to the main string and gives out the words one by one. That's all I want. So in the end, what I want to do is to be able to do this. That's all I want. So let's comment this out for now, because now right how it's going to work. Let's change these things up a bit. Instead of a string, let's pass a string slice right here. Instead of a string, let's pass the string slice. But this won't work. It asks us to introduce lifetime parameters, and this is where a lot of people just switch back to string. I did too, but then I pushed through it, and I bet you will too. Let's implement a lifetime function and see what happens. Alright, now it's asking us to implement a lifetime for this string as well. And now that we have implemented a lifetime for this, we'll also have to implement the lifetime for the word struct because it holds the vectors of these words, right? So let's give it a lifetime. This give the same lifetime as this. Now that is fine, but now we have to also use lifetimes over here in these impl blocks. This is how we do it. So now we have another error. This error is a blockage. We have to switch the method of how we do this to solve this error, because from string right here, it gives you an anonymous lifetime. It doesn't let you attach lifetimes to it. And if you do, it will show a clash of lifetimes because you just can't do that. You cannot give it a lifetime, the string that comes in here. You cannot do that. So instead of the from string trait, now we'll have to use the from trait. So let's get rid of this and just use from. And we are going to implement it for a string slice of a lifetime. Now this does not require an error to be implemented for it, so we remove that, and this becomes only from. Do that and just return self. And as you can see now, we have no errors right here. We are using lifetimes and still we don't have any errors, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now let's do the same for the word struct. Now to implement the word struct itself, we'll make some changes to the logic. So let's just delete this whole thing. Okay, now that's not mutable, so let's turn it into mutable. Alright, so we have a lot of errors right now. Let's change that. So let's call into on this and see what happens. And alright, now this is a vector of structs, which is a word struct, and this into is exactly what is using this function right here to turn the string into a struct. And in the end, now that we have a vector of words, let's return a word struct or a self struct with words equals to words. That's pretty much it. And this should do our thing. Let's delete this parse part of it. And let's right here, let words equal to, and this is going to be of the words type, dex.into. And let's print this out. Let's see what the result is. Alright, so we haven't implemented the lifetime for this word. So let's do that. And let's do that. And this is something that we couldn't do in the from string trait. We can do this in a from trait because it allows us to apply a lifetime on our input string. So that's like a very good thing. And let's try that again. And now it works. Everything works. The word is here. And as you might notice, the punctuations are gone. The commas and the strings, they're all gone in the beginning, in the end, everywhere. They're gone pretty much everywhere. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to explain lifetimes to you all, and that's what I think, hopefully managed to do in this video. And try to implement this yourself, and that's pretty much it. Bye.